In this video, we're going to talk about infrastructure as code with AWS CloudFormation. Before we dive straight into CloudFormation itself, we need to clear up a couple of key terms. These terms are prerequisites to help you get a bit more familiar with what we're going to cover later. So first, let's talk about infrastructure as code, or IAC. Before infrastructure as code came along, setting up cloud environments was mostly a manual process. The normal workflow was logging into Management Console, clicking through menus, and configuring everything by hand. For example, if you needed a server, you had to go open the corresponding section, select an instance type from the drop-down menus, choose the right operating system image, manually configure storage, networking, and security groups, double-check every checkbox, every setting, and every option, and run the server. We can list out a whole set of headaches that came along with this manual approach. For example, first, the toil of repetitive work. Every time you needed a new server, you had to go through the same long series of steps, open the console, configure everything, and double-check all the boxes. It was draining and easy to make mistakes when we were rushing. Second, the hardships of repetitiveness. Imagine doing this not just once, but dozens of times across development, testing, or production environments. It was the same story on repeat, wasting hours that could have been spent on actual building. Then there's the problem of history and memory. Let's say you configured dozens of these settings over the years, and now it's time to introduce a change. Good luck remembering exactly what you set up 3 years ago. You had to dig through the console, click after click, to figure out what you did back then. Another issue was replication. If you wanted to take one single setting and duplicate it in another environment, or maybe scale out an additional resource, you had to repeat every single step manually. There was no copy-paste button for infrastructure. And of course, there are plenty of other reasons this approach was a nightmare. It didn't scale well, it was prone to inconsistencies, and it tied your infrastructure knowledge to whoever last touched the console. We could honestly keep listing these pain points until tomorrow, but that's where infrastructure as code, or IAC, flips the game. IAC gives you a way to describe your infrastructure in a structured, abstract language. Instead of thinking about individual clicks in the console, you think in terms of resources. Each resource, like a server, a database, a VPC network, or a bucket, and so on and so forth, is represented as a block of code in your template. This abstraction works like magic, because with IAC, you don't spell out the step-by-step process of creating something. You only define what you want, not how you want it. So you don't involve yourself into that process. The IAC tool figures out the exact command to make it happen. The other thing is it's reusable. Once a resource is described in code, you can reuse that definition across environments, development, testing, or production, without having to reconfigure it manually. It's also versionable. Because it's a code, you can store it in Git, track changes, and roll back if something goes wrong, just like you do with your application code. And at last, it's shareable. Your team can collaborate on the same templates, ensuring everyone's built infrastructure in a consistent way. So the most important note that you should remember is that infrastructure as code turns your cloud setup into something you can define, repeat, and share. Instead of endless manual steps, you write your infrastructure as code once, and you can reuse it consistently to build environments whenever you need them. Now, CloudFormation is AWS's native service for infrastructure as code. It allows you to define and provision all your AWS resources like servers, databases, storage, and networking inside a template file. Once you've written that file, CloudFormation can build the entire environment for you automatically. Think of it as AWS's built-in way of bringing IAC to life directly within its ecosystem. Let's break down how it actually works step by step. Everything in CloudFormation begins with a template. A template is simply a file written in YAML or JSON format that describes the resources you want AWS to build for you. Those resources could be anything from EC2 instances, VPCs, to S3 buckets and IAM roles. To picture it, think of a template as a shopping list. On the list, you specify exactly what you need, like flour, eggs, milk, butter, or anything, and when you hand the list over, the store gathers those items for you. CloudFormation works the same way. You hand AWS your template, and it collects and provisions all the resources you've requested. Once AWS reads your template and builds the resources, everything it creates together is known as a stack. A stack is the packaged environment built from your template, and CloudFormation keeps it grouped so you can easily manage or even tear down the whole thing in one go. The real magic of CloudFormation is that it works by calling the AWS APIs under the hood. Every resource you define in your template gets translated the exact sequence of API calls that AWS itself requires to provision and configure those resources. And that's how CloudFormation and Infrastructure as Code approach simplify and boost your tech productivity and maintainability. To wrap things up, let's quickly summarize the main benefits of CloudFormation and IAC. The first benefit is consistency. When you use the same template, CloudFormation provisions the same configuration every time, whether it's development, testing, or production. So you don't end up with the slight differences across environments that can cause unexpected bugs. Next is speed. Instead of manual creating servers, networks, or storage through the console, CloudFormation builds everything automatically from your template. This obviously cuts down setup time from hours of clicking to just a few minutes of deployment. Another key benefit is fewer errors. Because resources are created directly from code, there's no chance of forgetting or setting or misconfiguring a parameter. This reduces human error or gives you more stable, predictable environments. Then we have scalability. With templates, you can easily replicate the same infrastructure across multiple regions or accounts or expand an existing setup by adjusting a few lines of code. That makes scaling up or down much more controlled and repeatable. And finally, you can have all the benefits at no costs. CloudFormation is free and it doesn't add any extra charge. You only pay for the AWS resources you provision. So you gain automation and consistency at no additional cost beyond the infrastructure you're already running. Alright, that wraps up our video. Thank you so much everyone for watching. Please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and I'll see you in the next video.